There is something deeply uncomfortable about recognizing that, behind many human behaviors, there exists an unconscious desire for self-destruction. We are not talking about something obvious, like a deliberate decision to end it all. What Freud proposed is much more disturbing, that there is within the psyche a silent, insistent force that pushes us toward suffering, toward the repetition of pain, toward collapse, as if somehow the return to nothingness were more desirable than continuing to exist under the weight of conflict. This force he called the death drive. For a long time, psychology relied on what Freud called the pleasure principle, the idea that human beings seek to avoid displeasure and pursue pleasure as a basic mechanism of survival. It is an elegant theory, almost comforting. After all, it makes sense to imagine that suffering is a mistake in the system, a flaw that must be corrected. But then paradoxes arise. People who sabotage themselves at the threshold of success, relationships that repeat with the same destructive patterns, the relapse that comes exactly when everything seemed to be going well, the pain that returns not as an accident, but as fate. And it is here that Freud proposes what may be one of the most radical ideas of psychoanalysis. What if the mind does not seek only pleasure? What if, on a deeper level, there is a desire to return to the inorganic state, to death, that expresses itself in disguised forms, such as guilt, repetition, failure, sabotage? This theory is not comfortable. It does not offer easy consolation, but it has a brutal power of explanation, because it forces us to look at what is hidden, the cycles that repeat, the patterns that impose themselves, the choices that seem to escape rational control. It is not to say that people want to suffer. No one consciously chooses pain. But there are forces within the psyche that operate on the margins of will, that challenge logic, that act as silent internal scripts, guiding behaviors, affections, and thoughts. Throughout this video, we will dive into this dark territory of the mind. We will understand what Freud really meant by the death drive, how it manifests in everyday life, and why pain so often returns, even when everything in us says we want to avoid it. Not with the intent of pathologizing existence, but of illuminating it. Because what is not understood repeats itself. This is not a video for those seeking quick answers. It is a deep, honest, almost clinical conversation about the nature of human suffering. And perhaps, by the end of it, something within you will stop repeating, because it has finally been heard. Freud believed that all psychic activity obeys a fundamental force, the pleasure principle. This force functions as a primitive yet extremely efficient navigation system that guides the mind to seek what generates immediate satisfaction and to avoid what causes pain. Pleasure here is not just hedonism. It is the discharge of tension, the restoration of balance, the suppression of any excitement that disturbs internal order. For a long time, this explanation was sufficient to account for most human behaviors. The child who cries for food and calms down when breastfeeding, the adult who seeks comfort in vices or distractions, the choices we instinctively make to escape suffering. All of this can be read as manifestations of the pleasure principle operating silently. According to Freud, this tendency arises early in life and continues to govern the functioning of the unconscious even when the ego develops and begins to deal with the demands of reality. Therefore, Freud introduced a second gear into this system, the reality principle. It does not replace the pleasure principle, it modulates it. It teaches the subject to delay gratification, to endure momentary pain in exchange for greater and more lasting satisfaction. We learn to control impulses, to plan, to sacrifice immediate desires for future goals. This makes us functional adults, integrated into the world. But the central gear remains the same, the pursuit of avoiding displeasure,